Welcome to episode 65 of the How to Japanese podcast. I'm Daniel Morales from howtojapanese.com, and it's June 2025. We made it. Otsukare-sama deshita. Well, it's finally summer. June 16th was the first 30-degree day in Osaka, and it looks like there will be very few days under 30 for the next couple months, next few months, more than just two, I think. We've had maybe a couple days where it's been like 28, 29, but it's been 30 or above most of the days. And I feel like we got pretty lucky this year, though. May was pretty reasonable. There were only a couple days that felt truly hot and not many that were all that humid, but that's no longer the case. We are fully in the Japanese summer weather. We are in put on sunscreen first thing in the morning weather. It really does feel worse than it did 20 years ago, but it was hot back then as well. My advice for Japanese summer is run your air conditioner as much as you want. Electricity bill be damned. Global warming be damned. I hate to say it. It's not worth suffering. It's also not worth destroying all of the paper products in your house. If you leave your books in the Japanese heat and humidity, they will quickly yellow beyond that pleasant shade you see at used bookstores. They'll get blotchy and brown and basically become worthless if you ever want to sell them. If you're hot, your books are hot. Turn on the air conditioner. And one thing that you can do is just keep it on a pretty hot temperature. Run it at like 29 or 28, 30 even, and it'll still cool it down. Or you can also use the dehumidifying feature if you want it to be less of like a polar blast. That's my advice. So keep yourself cool, even if it's just a small little bedroom area. One little bedroom that you keep cool and the rest of the house off limits. Put your books in there, keep them nice and comfortable. This month I'll be talking about another small piece of language as I have in the past. And then at the end, as always, I have a tourist recommendation, this time one that's not Kansai or Kanto, so stay tuned for that. This month I wrote about nanです. Inspired by Hoshino Gen, the singer. My wife is a Hoshino Gen mega fan and recently got one of his concerts on Blu-ray. I'm not really into his music as much, but I'll listen if it's on in the background. Every now and then I hear something that's interesting, but at this point, a lot of them still sound really similar to me. So this concert we had on in the background, this Blu-ray that she bought, it didn't really make an impression on me until Hoshino Gen began some of his banter with the audience. At one moment, he kind of stands there and he looks out at the audience and he says, "Tanjoubi nan desu. Tanjoubi nan desu." What's going on with this phrase? I don't know if you glocked that, but you can probably tell that it's basically similar to the sentence "Tanjoubi desu." Tanjoubi desu, except with a little bit extra. "Tanjoubi nan desu," which is "Tanjoubi desu" is just a way to say it's my birthday. "Tanjoubi desu." If somebody says that, the speaker says this to some people, "Tanjoubi desu," it's a way of saying it's my birthday. Hoshino adds a little word in there, nan desu. Nan comes right before the des. This is a little phrase that I've written about before, actually in December of last year, the noda that comes in written Japanese at the end of clauses. It attaches to a noun. When it attaches to a noun, you get a na between the noda and the noun, thus nanoda. So tanjoubi nanoda, tanjoubi nano desu. Either one of those is the same thing, just a different level of politeness. Nan desu is just a polite spoken version of nanoda, nano desu, right? So nano desu becomes nan desu. It gets contracted. Nanoda could become nanda, nano desu becomes nan desu. So that's what this little phrase is doing. Tanjoubi nano desu, tanjoubi nan desu. But what does it mean? Let's first look at the sentence without it. As I mentioned, tanjoubi desu is it is my birthday. That's what Hoshino is saying. He's telling the audience it's his birthday. He's saying it is my birthday. What's the nan doing in there? What does it add to the sentence? The Kotobank, Kotobank is a online dictionary. The definition there basically of nano desu says a polite version of nanoda. So now we need to look at the definition of nanoda, and it provides this definition. 説明または強い断定の意を表す。説明または強い断定の意を表す。So it expresses explanation or strong declaration. The keywords here are 説明 and dante. 説明 is, I think, pretty easy as a concept. I think a lot of people will probably be familiar with it. It means explanation or explain. So 説明する, 説明します is a way to say explain. Dante, on the other hand, is a little bit more vague. So let's look at it in the dictionary. There are two definitions, but the one we really want is the grammatical definition because Dante gets thrown around a lot in grammatical definitions, especially. And here's what it says. 文法である事物に対して何であるか、どんなであるかを判断することを表す言い方。文法である事物に対して何であるか、どんなであるかを判断することを表す言い方。That's the first sentence of the definition. The next sentence is 文語では助動詞なり、たり。古語では助動詞だ、ですや、である、でありますなどの語をつけて言い表すして。So that definition, the first sentence I think was really the most important one. It says in grammar, expressing a judgment about what something is or the way that something is. So 何であるか、どんなであるかを判断する. Expressing a judgment about what something is or the way that something is. Then it goes on to specify in the written language, it is expressed through the auxiliary verbs nari and tari, and in spoken form, da, des, dearu, and dearimasu. It's used to specify, it says shite. So it basically defines something. Nano des defines something in a strong manner, so it's a declaration, or it explains something. So explaining or declaring, establishing something in a kind of grammatical sense. So in Hoshino Gen's case, standing up in front of an audience, talking to a huge crowd of people about it's his birthday, I think we're seeing the setsume usage here, the explanation. He's saying something more than just, it is my birthday. He's saying something more along the lines of, so today's my birthday, or hey, it's my birthday. There's this almost invisible like jitsua in front of the phrase, jitsua, actually, right? This phrase that means actually. Without it, without the nandes, you don't have that jitsua. Without it, you're limited to, it is my birthday, in a kind of very Dwight Schrute kind of delivery, as I noted in my newsletter. If you're familiar with The Office, in particular the episode where Dwight and Jim forget Kelly's birthday and try to make it up to her by hanging a banner that literally says, it is your birthday, period. The nandes gives it more life than this. The tanjobi des is limited to this Dwight Schrute delivery. The nandes gives it more life, more implication. And I think it's one of these phrases that you have to be forced to learn how to use. You have to like find some sentences that work for you and gradually get used to it over time, because it's extremely hard to define and really helpful once you do get it right. For me, one of my third year teachers forced us to do storytelling exercises where we incorporated nda, noda, right, the contracted form of noda, nda, into talking about things that had happened in the past, and also combining it with ga as a kind of like transition phrase. So I think finding a few natural phrases will give you the familiarity you need, right? Like, so our teacher tried to get us to say things like, ittan desu ga, I went somewhere, like, what's a good example? Toshokan ni ittan desu ga, I went to the library, but here you're using that kind of declaration, you're just saying something that happens. You're kind of like on the verge of maybe explaining a little bit, but you're just kind of emphasizing with the ga, and it sounds very natural. One very easy natural phrase to combine with nandes on its own with a noun is the jitsua, right? As we mentioned earlier, this is kind of present invisibly in Hoshino Gen's tanjobi nandes, but you can actually verbalize it and make it explicit, right? So you can say, 実は何々なんです. Actually, it's 何々. And I went searching on Twitter to see what kind of phrases people were using with this structure. And I think I found a couple really good examples. These are all in the newsletter as well, which include the photographs that I'll be talking about. In the first, the author has a photograph of a kind of green cityscape with funicular tracks in the foreground, and then kind of green uh, trees in the background behind that. Funicular being this kind of, train tracks that go up a mountain, and then, greenery behind it. And there's the text that initially the first line says, 自然が多いところにいます。自然が多いところにいます. I'm in a place with lots of nature. So the expectations for the reader here are set up. We're in a place with lots of nature. It must be somewhere really far out. It must be beautiful, right? It's out in the countryside or something. The writer then subverts these by saying, 実は東京なんです. 実は東京なんです. Actually, this is Tokyo. Here, the nandes helps apply some of that subversion pressure and explanation along with the jitsuwa. And you could, of course, say the jitsuwa Tokyo desu. You could say that as well, but the jitsuwa Tokyo nan desu gives it a little oomph that it doesn't have otherwise. And I think using this jitsuwa nani nani nan desu will help you incorporate nandes into your active vocabulary more easily. But you don't always need it. I did find another example that doesn't use it. That example is there's a picture of a cat kind of playing in the entranceway of a Japanese house, the genkan as they call it. And the sentence on the tweet is, 猫たちにとって玄関は楽しい遊び場なんです。猫たちにとって玄関は楽しい遊び場なんです. Here, the author uses nitotte to set up the contrast, and also the wa, right? So for the cats, neko tachi ni totte, genkan wa, the entranceway, is actually a fun place to play. Genkan wa tanoshii asobiba nan desu. So to the cats, the entranceway is a fun place to play. So that's my official recommendation, is to add jitsuwa nandes to your list of memorized phrases and start to work it into your speech patterns when possible. Soon enough, I think you'll start to have a natural feel for when you can jettison this jitsuwa and use nandes all on its own. And you can also use ndes, no des with verbs. As I kind of mentioned previously, the ittan des. I think you can combine both these explanation and usage, declaration usages into one sentence. And I provided one of these in the newsletter. It was, 大阪万博に行ったんですが、ずっと雨だったんです。大阪万博に行ったんですが、ずっと雨だったんです. Here you have this ittan, which is a declaration. I did go to the Osaka Expo. It's almost like in English, the difference between I went to the Osaka Expo or I did go to the Osaka Expo. That's a really subtle difference that I think even natives, or especially native speakers, would have a difficult time explaining to a non-native speaker what's the difference between I went to the Osaka Expo and I did go to the Osaka Expo. That's really subtle. That's kind of what nandes is doing. So you have that ittan desu, I did go, and then you have this explanation, ずっと雨だったんです。雨だったのです. Which can explain a variety of different things. Maybe it's, depending on the context of the conversation this is responding to. You could say, why you didn't enjoy your time at the expo, or maybe why somebody says, oh, why do you look so sad, or something like that, or why, or if they bring up the expo, oh, why are you making that face? You say, oh, 行ったんですか? ずっと雨だったんです. Oh, it was just raining the whole time. I gave one other interesting example in the newsletter, I think, and that was to spend the next couple weeks or maybe like a month or so intentionally looking out for the nandes noda examples in the Japanese you're reading or watching. So often I think we're focused on the main words, what's going on with the sentence, that we end up ignoring some of these little things. And I compared it to basketball. If you make a point of watching the players away from the ball, you can really learn a lot about how the game works, how to make it easier to score, how you have to kind of take advantage of movement to open things up. Um, and if you do that, I think with Japanese, you're looking more how this language works, how it uses things to communicate, what's natural, things like that. I think you'll find by kind of looking away from the core to some of these auxiliary phrases. That's all I had for the newsletter. For tourist recommendations this month, I've got a more general recommendation that is simply go visit Beppu. For anyone who doesn't know already, Beppu is a city on the eastern coast of Kyushu in Oita Prefecture. And the first time I went was completely unplanned and kind of accidental in a way. I spent the summer of 2003 writing for a travel guide, and most of my route covered Shikoku. I arrived in Tokyo and I had to cover Kamakura, Yokohama, and Nagoya before that, which, to be honest, you could spend 2 months, a whole summer, a whole year covering those three cities alone. That my route, looking back, was totally unmanageable and crazy. Yokohama is basically the size of Tokyo, and you'd need at least, I think, a month to cover it correctly. And that's like if you're already familiar with Japan. This was only my second time in the country, and I still had really no idea what I was doing. I could speak the language somewhat well, enough to get around to ask major questions. But I remember arriving at Yokohama Station and just having no idea like how to understand the transportation situation that was going on, the best ways to get to and from everywhere. That's one thing we were supposed to cover. And I remember I went up to somebody and I said, "How do you get to Tokyo?" And they're like, "Where are you trying to go?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I mean, that really makes a difference. You can get from Yokohama to Tokyo in about 20, 30 minutes, or you can get from Yokohama to Tokyo in about an hour, depending on where you're trying to go. Um, so that's where I was, when I first arrived there. My two biggest memories of Yokohama are arriving at the station on a rainy day and there was a homeless guy standing under an awning pissing out into the rain. That was a bit of a shock. And then I stayed at a capsule hotel and made friends with the young staff there who were confused why I stayed so many days. But I just had to get out of the Minshuku that I was initially staying in because it had a curfew, and I was unable to kind of explore the nightlife. But I made it to Shikoku after Yokohama and Nagoya, and when I finished Shikoku, uh, I had two cities left on the route. I had to get to Kitakyushu. That was my last one on the northern part of the island, not too far from Fukuoka. But before that, I had to drop by Beppu. I don't know why my editor had planned this route. I imagine probably just because the person covering Kyushu hadn't been able to get to those two spots. But I started reading about Beppu probably when I was in Uwajima, which is on the west coast of Shikoku. It's a really nice little castle city where I had to what is still the best sushi I've ever had in Japan. And from there, I took the train to Yawatahama and got on a ferry to Beppu. And Beppu is an onsen city. That's what it's famous for. It's a tourist city. It was a tourist city before the tourist boom in Japan. It's a domestic tourist city. So I don't know what how it's changed in the last 15 years. The last time I went was probably around 2009 or 2010. And when I first went, which was that summer of 2003, I was only like acquainted with onsen in passing. On my first visit to Japan the summer before that, I went to a hot spring, and I was here on an internship. Was taken to a hot spring that summer, and I had also been to Dogo Onsen in that summer of 2003 when I went through Matsuyama. So I had been to those two at the very least. But that was about it, right? The first one I went to, I was kind of like not prepared for at all. I was kind of shuffled into this rural, nice onsen, a big, very big kind of rural onsen where you go and relax and go in the bath, and there's a relatively big bathing area. And as we were being shuffled in, I could see everybody holding these little towels, and I knew that I needed one of these, and I knew exactly what they were used for. But I was 20 years old and I didn't know how to like ask for one. And when I asked for a towel, they just gave me a big towel, and I was like, I know I need one of those eventually, but I need the little towel when you go in the bath, right? So, but I was prepared enough for the onsen experience as a whole, thanks to my college language classes. There was enough kind of like culture passed on through the lessons that I knew you had to take your shoes off indoors. I knew you had to wash your body before going into the bath. Other basics like that. So I did fine there. I just kind of like embraced it, and but I don't think I loved the experience, and I don't remember what Dogo was like. To be honest, because I was on my own, and I don't remember if there were other onsen other than that. But when I arrived in Beppu, I was like lukewarm on onsen as an idea, and when I left, I was like totally into all aspects of Japanese bathing culture. It just blew me away. It's this city right on the water, and it has every type of onsen imaginable in every neighborhood of the city. It has these giant hotel resort onsen that are like almost theme parks. They have these small municipal onsen that literally have like one bath, and that's it. They have sand baths, mud baths, baths with like white water, blue water, clear water, red water. Um, and I think the one thing that I really learned there was this idea of like the urban sento. The urban sento in Tokyo is probably best captured by the E Honda level on Street Fighter 2, where you see the painting of Mount Fuji in the background, and you've got a couple different baths that people are going into, and that's all nice and fine and good, but it's probably not onsen water. In Beppu, they have things like that, but they have even simpler ones that are literally like a single concrete or tiled bath in a basic municipal building with two extremely small changing areas and a single tub on each side. Except that which they do also have those in Tokyo, but these in Beppu are like, this is the real stuff. This is like water from the ground. This is real hot springs water. There's just so much thermal activity in the area that like steam is shooting up from the sewers. If you go in the winter, it's like all these clouds of like steam coming up from the ground all over the city. In addition to the Sento like onsen, there are two very famous sand baths, Sunayu. One is on the coast. I believe it's still open. I don't know. I haven't been. But I went to Takegawara Onsen, which is housed in this really nice wooden building, and is a bit of an experience. I think I went once, and the sand wasn't quite as warm, and the second time I went was much nicer. Then like the city starts on the coast, and it kind of rises into the hills that are just alongside the coast, almost like Kobe a little bit. And they have these things that they call the hells, which are these tourist trappy areas with different colored ponds bubbling. And then there's way up in the hills, there are these like mud baths that are a bit run down the last time I went. And there's really like no nicer place to do some domestic tourism in Japan than Beppu, because really the only thing to do is go in the baths and eat, and that's it, and sleep and drink. If I haven't been to Oita City, that's the prefectural capital. It's not too far away. I imagine that would have everything that a prefectural city capital has, namely like museums and some attractions like that. But Beppu is a little bit more limited, I would say. There's also a city called Yufuin, which is just over the hills to the west from Beppu, I believe. And it has, I think, what is still to the day the nicest onsen water that I've been into. It's just incredibly this cloudy, light, whitish blue water that was just amazing, perfect. Takes about an hour to get to from Beppu on the bus, and once you're there, it's a little bit tough to get around. So you might consider driving or doing a bicycle rental or something like that. When I went, there were bicycle rentals at the station, and there weren't many people there. These days, given the number of tourists coming from abroad, I imagine it's been discovered already, and so I would recommend trying to book something in advance. The times that I went, we just kind of showed up and did Higaeri Onsen in Yufuin, and asking for recommendations when we got there. But if I could, the way I would do it now is I would go and spend the night in Yufuin and then come back and try and maybe like do the morning in Beppu, wake up, go and get on the bus, leave our stuff at the hotel, maybe explore Yufuin a little bit, and then whenever they let us check in, just stay at the onsen and go in the bath as many times as I wanted and eat a good dinner there. That would be the way to do it. But at any rate, Beppu is a must-see onsen spot in Japan. I think really truly unique. I've been to some of the big onsen, been to Kusatsu, Atami, Ginzan in Yamagata, Tsurunayu in Akita. My absolute favorite single bath was Sukayu Onsen in Aomori, which I guess that's a little bonus recommendation. Sukayu Onsen in Aomori has this really like sour water, which is very interesting. The most distinct like smelling, tasting water, I think. And they have what they call a 1,000-person bath, Sennin Buro. But that's just one spot. It's outside of Aomori City, up on a little mountain that I can't remember that maybe Hakoda-san or something like that. I want to say, but that's like one little resort. Beppu is like an entire city just filled with different baths. I wish I had more kind of up to date intel that I could provide on Beppu. I would say it's probably safe to still avoid the hills. The mud bath, if it's still in operation, was really, really in kind of a state of disrepair. And so it's a bit distant from the main part of the city. And so I would say, unless you're seeing really, really, really good recommendations for it, you can probably avoid the mud bath. I would stick around the core part of Beppu and Yufuin. Really, that would be it. The one reason to go up into the hills in Beppu is to get a great view of the city. There's a really nice little area up on the top of the hills, and there's a couple spots up there. You could get like an onsen tamago and things like that and look out over the city. That's worth doing. The mud bath, I think you can probably skip. It's kind of up there in the hills too. But again, yeah, so that this is all my intel from 15 years ago. I'm sure that the city itself has aged and kind of turned over. There was one bath that I saw like two different versions of that had been renovated. Actually, over the three times that I went, I think the second time it wasn't open. It's called, I think, Mushiyu. I believe that's what it is, the steam bath. I'm sure it must have some other name, but this steam bath had a little like tunnel that you would walk through into this like almost like oven or something, and they had straw that they would put down, and the straw had this amazing smell, and you would go in, sit in this steam bath like sauna for like 5 minutes, and then you would crawl back out and go into the regular bath. But they renovated over the course from 2003 to like 2009, and it totally changed. And it was much, much nicer. So I'm sure that a lot of the city has undergone a lot of that. But so definitely do some research if you do go. But yeah, I think Beppu in general probably still worth the trip. And if you're on the fence with onsen, it's a good place to go to determine whether or not you're really into them or not, because they're some of the best. and they have every different level from the bare bones experience to the truly like luxury ryokan experience. That's all I've got for Beppu. At the end of the newsletter, I've got a couple other Iro points. I've got another blog post about Murakami's travel memoir. I recommend the Rakuten's mobile phone service. I guess I hadn't shared this yet, but I switched to Rakuten at some point in the last like 6 months or a year from this service that I was using when I first moved over here, and I was paying in dollars for. And so my bill would kind of go up and down with the exchange rate, and I got sick of that. So I finally switched over to Rakuten, and it's great. I mean, the main benefit being you get free NBA League Pass, which is kind of an incredible bonus. You There's a Rakuten NBA League Pass app, both for my phone and for my TV, that you install, and you just log into your Rakuten account. You can watch literally every NBA game. I watched Tyrese Halliburton's game winner in game one of the finals on my lunch break. Literally, the bell rang at 12 for lunch break. I whipped out my phone, turned it on, and like was able to catch the last minute of the game. It was awesome. Although, man, felt bad for the Pacers there in Game 7. But I know that some people have said that the connection is poor in the Tokyo subways. I've noticed like there's a couple pockets here in Osaka that seem to have poor connection, but I haven't really had any issues with it. And it's a really good deal. It's a really, really good deal. I think the max you pay is like 2,000 or 3,000 yen. And that's only if you use over like 10 or 20 gigabytes of data. And so now it's nice to not feel really like limited, and I can kind of stream video without like downloading it on Wi-Fi first. So um, if you've ever been thinking about switching to a new plan, or if you're a huge NBA nerd like I am, uh, I can't recommend it enough. I got one of my friends who was scared to switch because he was worried he'd watch too much basketball. I was like, dude, no, it's too good. It's too good. And the league pass, it's really incredible. It's if you're into basketball, you got to go get it. And then the other recommendation I have is actually one is in the newsletter and one will be separate. But I bought some shoes on Adidas on their online store, and because I wear a size 13 in the US, I'm usually like 12 and a half, 13 depending on the brand, and that's like 31 centimeters, 30 or 31 centimeters, and there's usually very rarely any of those in stores. And so I found Adidas online finally, and you can search by shoe size and really very quickly see what's available in these bigger sizes. And it came quickly. It shipped almost immediately and was there like almost the next day. The shoes are pretty comfortable. I just needed some new gym shoes because my gym makes you bring shoes that have not touched the outside ground. So I needed some of those. And then actually I ordered some from Skechers. So I can recommend Skechers too. Their selection wasn't quite as good as Adidas, but I bought some like slip-ons that I can use at the office, so I can like go in and like switch to something a little bit more comfortable. So I would recommend both of those if you're looking for shoes in Japan. It does seem like they both have pretty good return policies as well if you want to order something and try it on. But if you know your size, like in US size or international size, and it's slightly larger and you need a better selection or better service than some of the stores, definitely check those out. And that's all I've got for you in June. It's almost July. We barely squeezed in here at the end of June. So I will see you again soon in July. I've already got some material drafted, but I also have a couple new ideas that I'm excited to write about. So we'll see what I end up using. But I will see you next month.